Recording in progress.
It is 6 o'clock on October 15th. I'm calling this meeting of the Anchorage School Board to order. In the room, we have Member Higgins, Member Jacobs, Member Donnelly, Student Representative Pack, myself, Member Howellman, and Member Bellamy. Member Lessons is excused and off grid, and Member Wilson has been joining us online. With that, I would like to ask our student representative to read us in the flag salute.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And would also ask Representative Pack to read our land acknowledgement.
We acknowledge that we gather here today on the traditional lands of the Dena'ina people of the Upper Cook Inlet. For thousands of years, the Dena'ina people have been and continue to be the stewards of this land. ASD is committed to diversity and inclusion, and it is with honor and respect that we recognize all Indigenous people who live and learn in our community.
I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Move to approve the agenda.
Okay, moved and seconded. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda they wish to offer at this time? Okay. Seeing and hearing none, the agenda is accepted. In section B, up first, we have a report from Student Representative Pack.
Thank you, Mr. President. So for the first thing in my report that I want to cover is that our Student Advisory Board met last Tuesday on the 8th. And before that meeting, we had our advisor workshop, and that was the first of this year. So our student government advisors across schools in our district met together and kind of unite to think about plans and our purposes for the coming school year. And then now in our student advisory board meeting, we had our Anchorage Youth Vote present, and they talked about just empowering youth voice in places like school boards, or other places. And then we had the ASD construction supervisor, Ms. Knapp, go over a conference opportunity. So we're inviting some Anchorage School District students to speak at the Association for Learning Environments Alaska Chapter Conference, which is December 5th and 6th. And for our reports, we had 3 5-minute videos from Mears, West, and Wendler, and they're all very well made. And they just covered their school's programs and what makes them unique. And if possible, I would like to send them to Mr. MJ Thim for his consideration, or if ASD wants to go over that content, because it's really good. And then we had a brief discussion with the Senior Director of High Schools, Mr. Backman, and we went over the 2 different proposals for a 7-period or 8-period schedule. And right now, our student leaders across the district are now distributing that survey to gain insight on what students think about those changes. We also made a motion and then eventually passed the motion to create the committee that would help assess our data monitoring data. And so right now we're collecting students who are interested, and eventually, not this meeting, but the next meeting when that comes out, we'll probably have students who will submit questions to this board. Next big thing is the OSOG Fall Conference at the Association of Alaska Student Governments. We met this past Friday to Sunday at Delta High School, or Delta Junction High School. And through it all, we looked over 15 resolutions. 2 resolutions were presented by Eagle River High School. Resolution 3 was entitled Additional Elective Credits for High School Students' Participation in Extracurricular Fine Arts Programs and Clubs. And so that resolution was passed unanimously by the OSOG. And what that means is now it will be sent to our Student Advisory Board for their consideration. And what it basically means is that for students participating in like about 100 hours, I think it's 120 hours of fine arts programs, that will count as an elective credit because they're contributing so much time into that. And now Resolution 4 was also presented by Eagle River High School. And this one was titled Making 1-Year Foreign Language a Graduation Requirement in the Anchorage School District. And after a lot of debate, that resolution did not pass, so it will not be considered by the Student Advisory Board. So Resolution 3, which is the elective credits through fine arts, will be presented and discussed hopefully in our next SAB meeting and then brought to the school board for your consideration. Now I would also want to mention resolution number 10, which was the resolution of the conference. And it was a resolution that states that the Alaska Association of Student Governments supports a requirement for the Alaska State Legislature to release a state education budget before school districts must decide their school district operational budget. And now that passed unanimously. It'll be forwarded for review to the Department of Education and Early Development of Alaska, and it will eventually be sent to the Alaska Legislature for their consideration. And what that resolution does is basically address the issue that some school districts are having to pink slip some tenured teachers because they have to decide their budget for the next fiscal year without knowing exactly what the state legislature is giving them. And so that I thought was a pretty important resolution that was passed. ASD, we actually won the most spirited region. So region 4 is ASD, and we brought a lot of spirit. And so that was a lot of fun. And now on October 24th, Senator Sullivan will be meeting with Anchorage student leaders from both our Student Advisory Board and Anchorage Youth Court to discuss his One Pill Can Kill campaign, which addresses the fentanyl crisis in Alaska. And so in that meeting, we will have students talk about the campaign, or we'll hear him talk about the campaign, and then eventually students will give their thoughts on how to get the word out and make the campaign successful. So there's a lot of things that I covered. And the most important thing is that our next SAB meeting is on November 12th, and it'll be a 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from board members? Member Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the report, Mr. Peck. Just curious, do you recall the vote on the foreign language resolution?
The specific number I do not, but the general consensus was that the body did not support that kind of requirement.
Any other questions? Seeing none, next on our agenda is the military report. We have Colonel Hanson. Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Colonel Dustin Hanson, Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson's Mission Support Group Commander. I just want to say thank you for the invitation to be here tonight, giving me 5 minutes to just give you a quick update. I'd like to make 3 points with our audience here tonight. Number one is the Academies of Anchorage. So Joint Base Elmendorf-Richardson is looking forward and anticipating a solid partnership with Anchorage School District through this Academies of Anchorage, as we see ourselves as a career pool looking to attract, recruit, retain local homegrown talent. As I was reviewing some of the academy tracks offered by several of our different academies, these are the careers and jobs that stood out to me that we as JBEAR could absolutely use talent. I saw academies including such as technology project management, transportation and logistics, health sciences, business administration, multimedia marketing and design, engineering, natural resource and environmental management, computer science and information technology, behavioral health and human sciences, human services, architecture, industrial technology, metal fabrication, culinary and hospitality management, biomedical science, mechanics, to no one's surprise, aviation technology, veterinary assisting, film, audio, video, cosmetology, early childhood, certified nurse aides, EMTs, information technology, electronics, telecommunications, automotive maintenance, dental assisting, medical office coding. I've darn near rattled off nearly all of these tracks. And my point is to make sure that as we harness the talent and the skills and the experiences of our kids here in this district, think of JBEAR as a career pool that's looking again to attract, retain local homegrown talent. We have an important mission, as you all know, and it's important for us to be a good partner with our community and with the school district. So as I think about how this can look in the future, I'm thinking about how we can be a place where we can expose these students to these different jobs that we have. I'm thinking about job shadowing. I'm thinking about internships. I'm thinking about industry credentials and earning college credits, apprenticeships. And probably most importantly, I'm just thinking about the success of skills and having a plan after graduation that's going to help our students and our community grow and thrive. Number 2 point, I'd just like to say thank you. A sense of thankfulness and gratitude. Over the past several weeks and as school has been kicking off, and I want to say congratulations as we approach the end of the first quarter. I know from my families and speaking to my school liaison officers, I've heard so many compliments on how Anchorage School District is going above and beyond to ensure that our families of military connected students feel embraced. They feel like they are being supported. We are still in the flux of a permanent change of station season. We still have many military families moving in. It usually starts to slow down around this time, but it's not. And the stories I'm hearing from these families is one of just appreciation for what the school districts and the schools are doing for our families to bring them in. We have a myriad of different types of experience, whether it's students coming from overseas, such as Japan. We had 3 families move in this week that are being embraced by the school district to get them in schools. We have students coming from Department of Defense schools that are now transferring to the Anchorage School District. There's nuances with that they are feeling supported within. So I just want to say thank you for the strong partnership, and it's felt among our community. And so I hope to continue to keep that going. And then finally, my final point is I just want to say, J-Bear, we are a partner here, and you can count on us. You can count on us if there's going to be transportation challenges. Think about J-Bear and how we can help out. If there's going to be meal or food challenges, think about J-Bear and how we can help out. The reason I like to come to these each month is to make sure that that you see us as a partner and not as an ambiguous nebulous that only certain people can get in. But we are here to reach out and to help each other. So I thank you for your time, and I stand by for any questions.
Any questions? I do want to say really appreciate your third comment, but I think most staff in the Anchorage School District have always felt like it's a special responsibility to care for your students, especially during times of high deployment, and when families are disrupted. They're a very significant chunk of our student body, and it's good to hear we're getting some of that right. Yeah, always. So thank you very much. I see no other questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your support.
Board conference and committee reports. Anyone have anything in particular they want to bring forward? Yeah. October 31st is our next round of committee meetings for finance, communications, and governance. Someone apparently thought Halloween was the right moment for those meetings to take place. We'll see how that works out. That brings us to goal monitoring and our math proficiency for grade 8. We'll turn it over to Superintendent Bryantt.
Thank you, Mr. President. So this evening, we'll walk the board through our math proficiency goal monitoring conversation. For the public's awareness, the Anchorage School District is governed by 3 board goals. One of them is on reading proficiency. The other is on college career and life readiness. And today, we'll focus on the 8th grade math proficiency as measured by the AK Star summative assessment. As I shared in our technical report 2 weeks ago, we are making progress towards our goal. Currently, we're on track for 23-24 at 34.47% of students currently being proficient, with our goal to increase to 41.5% by 2028. We also provided a high-level overview of the various tactics that we have in mind to improve proficiency, but I'd like to welcome questions from the board members as to how we can continue to make progress towards this critical goal. So I'll go ahead and pause and see if there are any questions in the queue.
Member Donnelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Superintendent, it's really confusing because the state has changed how it measures proficiency multiple times over the past 6 or 7 years. And I wish we could have an analysis of how we were moving towards achieving our former goal, which I believe was 80% proficiency, how much progress we had made. But I think during the period of time that that goal was set, I think it changed how it was being measured by the state also. So I wish we could develop an analysis that just said, well, during that period of time, we made this much actual progress or not. And then now we're starting a new period where we're measuring. Do we have anything that exists like that?
Member Donnelly, I'll go ahead and hand it off to our technical experts. Mr. Opitz.
Sure. Thank you for your question. You're right. It is incredibly tricky. Not only did it change once, but it's changed multiple times, which makes that analysis very difficult. In particular, I think I'm just going back in my memory. I believe it was AMP and then PEAKS, and now we are on AK Star. And so we've not had a very long period of time with any one assessment over the past decade. We could look into that, but I would provide caution about reading too much into it when it changes like that, because you're correct, it makes it very difficult to track progress over time.
Member Bellamy.
Also, we did change from 3rd grade to 8th grade, and we've changed our goal, and so that also created a different pool of data. So we've and the scores that we have now are from the spring of 2024. So and kids they're getting ready to test right now, right? Or they're fall.
So AK Star is in the spring, and this is based on AK Star, and so this is only our 2nd year of data on this assessment.
Okay.
So in the spring of 25, we'll have our 3rd year of data.
But not at 8th grade. It will be 8th grade? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Member Jacobs.
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the question by Member Donnelly. And I think our time, at least as board members, is probably better well spent asking for we're fine with a measuring stick, but maybe just use the same one for a decade and let us see how we can do. And so I know a deputy commissioner who's got some friends, maybe he can help us out. With that said, I am not an analytics expert, like all you folks at the table. What I think I understand is 2 points don't necessarily allow trend analysis. Then I also read that 3 points is maybe called a story now. And so curious as to what I think I'm seeing and looking at the data is that we're roughly treading status quo year over year, but there are pockets of risers and fallers. And so, and then we only have 2 data points to compare. And so when we looked at our initial data, we said we aren't going to be able to do much analysis from our previous measuring stick to our current measuring stick, and now we have 2 data points to the current measuring stick. Can we yet do any meaningful analysis between those 2 points, or do we need a 3rd one before we can start digging in further? Thanks.
Well, we appreciate your question. We always dig in no matter what. One thing I would just make sure that is on the top of everyone's mind is this is one particular data point on one assessment. We also use the other elements of the fall and winter map scores. We also, of course, our teachers are using common, formative assessments aligned to their curriculum along the way. Of course, we don't have that type of data at our level because it's really at the classroom and building level. So it is difficult to dig in too deeply, but I could pass it off to some of my colleagues on the curriculum and instruction side to share some thoughts about that going forward.
Yes, Sean Prince, Senior Director of Teaching and Learning for Secondary Division. I would say, Member Jacobs, that we are looking at each of those things, and we're trying to make sure that our teachers and educators around the district are taking special note of high leverage practices for all their classes. And we're just focusing on instruction, moving that needle forward.
Seeing no other questions, if you want to continue. Member Bellamy.
So, and I'm looking on page 4, the chart, and I'm just trying to get a sense of whether it looks like we're testing less kids in 23, 24, pretty much across the board. Is that just the enrollment dropping, or are kids, that's not an indication that kids are opting out, correct?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it is fewer kids, but if you actually look at the percentage of students participating, we're up a couple of percent
Okay.
From the previous year. So which would lead us to, it would indicate that it is less kids.
Okay.
In terms of enrollment.
Seeing no other questions, if you want to continue.
I guess rather than taking questions, if we could go to slide 7.
7.
Yep. So if the board would take a moment to look at the implementation strategies, this could be another area where we'd be happy to answer questions, but I can kick us off. If our math curriculum team could expound upon the curriculum implementation action steps and how our strategic curriculum adoptions support our proficiency goals.
Amanda Barr, I'm the math curriculum coordinator for the school district. So we have 2 different curriculum areas that we're really focusing implementation support on this year, particularly at K-8. We've got our iReady classroom mathematics. We're in year 4 of that implementation. And then for our algebra, geometry, and algebra 2, this is our first year of district-wide implementation for that program. So we've got varying levels of ways that we're supporting that. At middle school, it's largely through our in-service days, and our department chairs become our resource for that. Elementary, it's, again, our in-service days and our site-based specialists and the professional learning teacher experts help with supporting implementation at that level.
I can probably add to some of the work that we're doing at the elementary level to support our math work with iReady in mostly 3rd through 5th grade. We have spent a significant amount of time looking at our pacing guide and making changes to ensure that there's additional time for standards typically not taught until after assessments. So in other words, if we're noting that in a particular grade level, they're assessed highly in one particular standard, we're making sure that we're bumping that standard up to make sure that the kids are getting instruction in that standard. For example, measurement and data tends to be taught at the end of the year, but if it's highly tested in the Alaska Star, we're making sure that we're bringing that standard forward to be taught to our students ahead of time. Another thing that we're doing is we're looking at our lower performing schools and really digging into the scope and sequence to make sure that we are including the prerequisite skills that are missing and asking those particular schools to spend time in those prerequisite skills. We just adopted the 4th and 5th grade CKLA, which only requires 30 minutes less a day to be taught in CKLA. So we've asked schools or suggested to schools that they spend more time in math in the 4th and 5th grade. So that gives them additional time. And then we continue to work with schools and teams to closely examine math practice, to support effective math instruction through our, as Amanda stated, with our PLTEs and also during PLC time. just, those are just a few of the things that we're working on at the elementary level.
Thank you. Any board member questions? Seeing none, please continue.
Okay, and actually on the topic of professional learning communities, if the team could expound upon the role that professional learning plays in our math goals. I see that under the professional learning tactic, we're currently in progress. What are the next steps to align the professional learning of our educators to increasing performance?
Thank you, Dr. Bryantt. The professional learning communities at the high school level and at the middle school level are currently trying to leverage that professional learning opportunity for their educators to focus on the new math implementation. So many of the schools at the high school division are actually going through their first run at this. We had pilot schools last year, and now they're taking their first run at this curriculum. And they're taking advantage of these Monday mornings to work with each other to work on best teaching practices for each of the ongoing Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 in the illustrative math curriculum. So they're working collaboratively with teams inside their own schools, and then we're trying to leverage our in-service days like November 11th and in February to maximize our cross-district pollination.
Thank you. So those cover the major pillars that we wanted to discuss with the board today, but I'll pause to see if there are any final questions on our progress towards meeting the math proficiency goal.
Member Bellman?
Just, I think I'm thinking out loud. Now that we've moved sixth grade to middle school, we can anticipate in probably even being more on target as we get sixth graders so sixth graders got the CKL. What does fifth graders have now? I'm just trying to look at the continuum of in math. So fifth graders have iReady. So then
iReady K through 8.
K through 8. Okay, so we can anticipate probably being more on target in another year and a half. Hopefully, as it's systemically implemented.
Yes.
Okay. And do you think by all indications, are we really being true to the curriculum? I mean, do you notice anything that's happening in our lower performing schools than are happening in our anything that is like strategic or maybe requires resource?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
two points to that. Now, one is speaking specifically to the curriculum. K-8 is iReady. And so
Okay.
we are in year 4 of that, but now we've got that alignment through to algebra, which is that next step.
Okay.
So having a completely aligned curriculum all the way up through algebra 2 actually is that's a hope to be moving the needle. And then specifically to the ability to be digging into those standards and seeing that cross pollination for the middle schools specifically.
Okay. All right.
I would add with a commitment to getting into schools and doing some snapshots to make sure that we're monitoring their needs and so that we can allocate resources appropriately. So we're preparing for that.
And that's our next step, to model after what ELA has been doing
Oh.
with their snapshots. So to bring that into the mathematics.
Okay. And with the MTSS, can you just tell us again how we're using that to help with math instruction?
So elementary is bringing MTSS in through their MTSS meetings with their MTSS teams, but they're also focusing through the PLC work, having the ability to do some lesson internalization for teachers aligned to specific standards, looking at aligning formative assessments to the I can statements. And that work is sort of in the initial launching phase for mathematics. Some schools have started earlier, but we've got more schools coming on board.
Okay. Okay.
We have done some work in utilizing the exit tickets provided with iReady and then defining specific supports so that teachers can draw from them. If kids need extension, here are your extension activities. If kids need remediation, here are your remediation activities.
Okay.
So putting that kind of in a bucket for them to draw from when needed based on what their exit ticket results are.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Member Jacobs and then Member Pat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Do we, and if so, how do we bring an educator retention lens to the data that we see regarding our three goals specifically? So, I mean, do we have a way to measure, we've looked at district-wide turnover, and I think it's roughly half after 5 years at this point, which isn't a surprise based on our deficient retirement plan. But do we look at how educator retention and frequent turnover impacts these student outcomes? And do we apply that lens to this work at all to measure what that looks like, aside from just losing a teacher, right? How that trickles down to standardized testing scores?
Thank you for the question. We have looked in the past over the last number of years in particular areas. We haven't looked at both reading, math, and a variety of subjects, but we have looked at the idea of tenure on student performance. To be clear, it's not clear. And what I mean by that is definitely after the first couple of years, we definitely see a bit of a bump in general. Of course, there's variability because we have super high performing first year teachers, but we do see a small bump after a couple of years. But after that, it's not very distinct over the years, all the way through 25, even 30 years. But definitely during the first few years, it is a place to invest and grow the capacity of our teachers. And we do know that after, as I stated, a couple of years, there appears to be something that happens where they become more proficient and do impact achievement and growth.
Follow, Mr. Chair.
If I can add.
Oh, yeah, please.
But knowing that we have turnover in teachers, we do a lot of work at the beginning of the year with our new educator symposium, making sure that we are providing training in the curriculum ahead of time. And then we're utilizing our professional learning teacher experts in the schools to really support our new teachers in the schools in any way that's needed, whether it be in math, behavior, or language arts. And so we are trying to add those supports ahead of time so that we don't have a gap in learning from the new teachers going in.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. So Mr. Opes, that trend that you noted, first, I appreciate that we're trying to onboard our teachers and mitigate, or at least kind of like our reminds me of our kindergarten through third grade reading curve, trying to make sure that they're not so far behind and then catching them up, which is great, but hopefully, our educators can start further along in that learning curve. But the trend that you mentioned, where after a few years you see a bump and then maybe things are stable at some point, does that trend carry through for all subject matter, or is math one of those areas that is different?
That's a great question. And when I began that answering it previously, what I was saying is that we don't have that in all content areas. This was specific to reading that we looked at that.
Okay.
So that would be something that would have to be investigated.
I last follow-up, if I might. I don't know if there's other board members that are interested, but I feel like the folks who appropriate funding both at the state and municipal level often, digest the fact that we can't retain educators in the state, and then move on to another conversation. But if we could tie it to student outcomes and standardized tests, although it's one data point for how a student's doing, is one that legislators are really, really hyper focused on, which is great. But if we could tie those two things together, it might make the data point more meaningful for them. And so I'm not the one who's going to be doing that work. So it's easy for me to say I think it's a great idea to look into it, but throwing that out there is an idea.
Thank you for that. And if I could just follow up, I wanted to provide one point of clarity. One of the things that we looked at was specifically growth from fall to spring when we looked at this data. because really achievement is a cumulative impact over many years across many teachers. And so what we were analyzing is actually the growth of those students while in the care of that individual for that 1 year. We found that to be a more reliable metric in terms of measuring that. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Any additional questions? If not, please continue. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pack.
I'm looking at page 7 as it's on the screen. I must say it's nice to see the green bars, the full green bars on the bottom 2 rows. Are the rest of the rows like expected on the schedule that you guys are working on, or are we behind? Or
I appreciate the question, Member Peck. It is nice to see all the green. I would also say that because we are in the middle of implementation, we're right where we should be. If you had a pilot school, 2 pilot schools last year at the high school division, this is the first year the entire district has a really good take a look at it. Then we're going to use the PLC process. We're going to have continuing ongoing professional development as this goes through. So I think we're actually right where we should be. Thank you for the question.
Other questions? Seeing none, please continue.
All right, and I think at this point, I'll give the team any last words, but I think that concludes the presentation we intended today. Thank you, team.
Thank you very much. That brings us to public comment on our agenda. This is our time to hear from the public. We welcome your comments, which are very important to us. The board has set aside an hour at the beginning of the meeting for those who have signed up to give public comment. Those not heard during the first hour will be heard at the end of the agenda. This is an opportunity for school board members to listen and for members of the public to inform the school board about their views. Please note that all public comments are limited to 3 minutes. The timer is right in front of the dais. All speakers will receive a courtesy alert when 30 seconds are remaining. That's a small bell. Speaking time may not be given or shared with other people. When your name is called, please come to the podium, state your name for the record, and direct your comments to the chair. Please understand this is not a time for dialogue. The purpose of this agenda item is for you, the public, to inform us, the school board, about your views. If you do have handouts to share with the board, please give them to Ms. Sullivan to my left, and she will distribute them to the board. I do want to call your attention to the detailed boardroom decorum guidelines and expectations that are available at the door as you enter the boardroom. We normally set aside time at the beginning for students to go first so they can get home and finish homework and get to bed. We have no students signed up. So we'll begin with adults, and Mr. Jeff Henson is to speak in person. And up next is Elisa Parent after that. Thank you. If you'll state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes. Perfect.
Can you hear me?
If you'll sit and get fairly close to the microphone, that makes sure that people listening online can hear you as well.
Test. Okay. My name is Jeff Henson. I'm here on behalf of Coach Jacques Schooner, known as Coach Jock, for Service High School, who was he's been there for basically 3 years coming up, and then he got released about 3 weeks ago for unknown reasons to the community. There's innuendos and whatever floating around. And I know this is at will state, and this can happen, and we don't get information. But also he runs basketball in the community here. And for some reason, he has been not allowed to rent facilities now with ASD. So this is hundreds of kids and families throughout not just the city, but the state, that now Fall League basketball league has been shut down basically because ASD won't allow him now to operate facilities in town when he's also still working as a counselor for ASD, as far as I know. So this doesn't make any sense. So, not only we got all these kids now, sports in this state is already at a backlog compared to other states in the nation, because just like bring up basketball for some reason, we don't have a shot clock up here. You go down to the lower 48, these kids go down there to play. They don't know how to play with a shot clock because they don't have it up here. So now we shut down the facilities for fall league, going back and forth here, because this gentleman runs it. But ASD says, oh, no, you can't. Our facilities, when, like I said again, hundreds of students, hundreds of kids, athletes, boys and girls participate in this from basically middle school to high school to do this stuff, to get better, because they have dreams, they have aspirations, they want to improve themselves. But ASD has shut this down for whatever reason. Like I said again, all we know is innuendos and whatever. But still working as a member of ASD, as a counselor, so something doesn't add up here to me. Maybe I'm missing something, but, you know, lastly, I'll say we're all flawed. We all make mistakes at times. Just ask my son about that, you know. But at least not judge a man without looking in the mirror first. As I say again, the punishment of this, does the punishment fit the crime? And from what I understand, the answer is no. We got all these kids in this community now getting ready for basketball for high school level, for middle school level. They've been doing this fall league thing for years now. And now all of a sudden it's shut down like 2 weeks ago because the facilities won't be able to be rented to the individual that runs this. So I hope there's this gets looked into and gets straightened out, because there's, like I said again, this doesn't just affect the Anchorage community. Just we got people that come in here. He restarted last year the oldest high school run facility basketball tournament in the state. Outside.
And thank you. Your time has expired. We'll ask administration to look into it. This is something the board is not familiar with directly. Thank you. Alyssa Parent, if you will state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Alyssa Parent, and as you can see, I'm a Colony basketball coach. I think you're going to get real familiar with this topic tonight because it affects so many of our kids in this district and in my district. I'm obviously from the Mat-Su School District. And I felt that it was a prevalent enough topic that was important that other people show up to sort of just emphasize what you're doing to this community. Anyways, I'm going to go back to my notes. I'm a current coach for basketball. I coach softball. I coach comp basketball. I coach comp softball. I've been an athlete my whole life. I know what direct impact athletes and sports has on these kids. It is vital for this community. And I know every one of you, whether you're familiar with this or not, know that this community is, our youth are struggling. They are getting involved in things that we don't want them to be in. And the last thing we want to do is take away sports. Statistics, I could throw statistics at you all day long that we are keeping kids off the streets. We are keeping kids from doing drugs. We are increasing positive impacts for success for their life. We are decreasing anxiety, stress, mental health, all of these things. We know this, and it's so important that we keep our kids in these gyms. Clearly, I'm here today to talk about the very similar topic that we are now seeing. Coach Jock, who was formerly the Service High School basketball coach, he also runs the True Game Basketball Academy. It's a nonprofit organization. He does not profit from that organization, but they are now being blocked from being able to rent any facility with Anchorage School District. There is a limited amount of basketball courts in this city, in the state, et cetera, et cetera. We really depend on the school's support in order to get our kids in the gym. The leader of this program, Jock, has literally saved hundreds of lives. He is a guy who came from a very background that was rough himself, from Compton, LA. and he had dreams of playing basketball. He got off the streets and he went and played college basketball. He has dedicated his life to these kids, and I can attest that he has saved literally hundreds of kids. Although the conflict may have arisen between Coach Jock and the Service High School basketball position, I'm here today to ask you to please take a look at this. Even if you're not familiar with it, please don't blacklist the True Game Academy from renting gym space. He may only be the coach of the True Game Academy, but for us, I'm a comp coach with Colony Basketball. It affects us as well. It affects Fairbanks. It affects our entire state. He is the one that organizes all of our tournaments for the state, and we depend on those Anchorage gyms to be able to have those tournaments. Again, I would just ask that you familiarize yourself with it, and I appreciate you guys' time in listening to us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Harvey Watson, and then followed by Jacob Schultz. Is Mr. Watson here? Not seeing him. We'll check back again later. Jacob Schultz. Thank you. And if you'll state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Jacob Schultz, and guess you're going to hear about the same thing again. But so my son is a freshman at Service High School. He's planning on playing on the Service basketball team, and I'm here to talk about the True Game ban as well, based on some of the things that I have experienced in my life. I played competitive sports from when I was in elementary school all the way through college. And those years and those experiences have shaped who I am. And I see I've coached youth sports as well. They shape kids' lives. And these are the years when we need to provide them with positive support, discipline, mentorship, structure. And for some of these kids, this is participation in these sports is some of the only structure and discipline that they may have in their entire day, entire life. So, and True Game is one of the only handful of competitive basketball programs here in Alaska, and even in the state of, or the city of Anchorage. And we should be encouraging kids. We should be not limiting access. We should be making it more available, if nothing else. My son did not play growing up, did not play in the True Game program. He came from a program that is called Get Better Daily, if that tells you anything about the mission that these programs try and provide to these kids. Gym space is not cheap. I remember when my kid was in GBD, as we call it, renting gym space was $3,000 to $5,000 a month. And that doesn't include tournament costs, that doesn't include travel costs. And by limiting True Game's access, it's going to increase the costs of that program too. And I can guarantee you no youth coach is trying to get rich off of making these programs. And so it has a trickle down effect, and the increase in costs may have an effect on the kids, and that they may not be able to afford to participate in that program anymore. And as has been stated before, there's to speak numbers, there's 30 teams in the True Game Fall League. Now, all of those games, because of the ban, have had to be rescheduled. And same with practices, because they were using ASD facilities. So now the True Game Fall League is taking place in Palmer. And I know from experience that not all of these kids can access Palmer because of the distance, availability of rides, those types of things. And once again, that's another barrier to access. I don't know what the grievances ASD has with True Game. I do not feel that they warrant the ban of the entire program from accessing ASD gym space, and we should be encouraging and making the ability for these kids to play the games they love more accessible. And
Your time has expired. Thank you very much. Next up, Brian Malta, followed by Rachel Posey. And if you will state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
All right. Thank you for giving me time to talk. My name is Bryantt Malta. I've been an educator for 26 years, 20 of those here in Alaska, and currently I teach at West High School. I'm here to ask you to think about what the district is proposing for high schools next year. I'm not here to tell you why academies are a bad idea, because I do not think they are. I just don't think they are what our students or community needs right now. We're entering next year in a massive deficit that, if I'm correct, is around $100 million. So why is ASD even considering two options which will put the district and the community of Anchorage anywhere from $3.5 to $5 million further into the red? There are a lot of great things about ASD that we can improve upon without adding this type of deficit. So why are we not looking at those things? Why aren't we looking at the things that we know our students need and directly addressing them? As a school district, our job is to prepare our students for success in their futures. They all need to know how to read, write, and do basic math. Yet Alaska has some of the lowest literacy rates and math scores in the nation. According to the governor's office on February 27th of 2023, quote, our current state summative assessment results tell us that about 80% of our third grade students are not proficient in reading. And on the national scale, Alaska ranked 49th in fourth grade reading, end quote. We are failing our students. To be clearer, at West High, based off the most recent MAP scores, this year's 58.63% of our freshmen read below or far below grade level, and 66.5% are below grade level in math. Academies are not going to fix this with less instructional time in core classes. In fact, it will make this problem worse. If we go to the proposed 7-period model, we will lose approximately 13 hours of instructional time. And if we choose the 8-period model, we will lose approximately 18 hours of instructional time over the course of the semester. Yet, they will still have to meet the same requirements to graduate. And if you look at ASD's data dashboard site, as of last year, only 68.48% of our students were on track to graduate. Why do our only choices make it even harder for them to graduate? We know that students who are not able to access the material they are presented are less likely to come to school. The research clearly states that things need to begin at the elementary level, especially at the 3rd and 4th grade level where we administer literacy tests in this nation. And we use those scores to predict future prison and classroom sizes. If we know that many of our students are not meeting that benchmark, why are we pushing them through? Why are we setting them up for future frustration and failure, which leads to poor attendance? Why are we not retaining these students so they can receive the instruction they need so they could read at grade level, which will have a positive effect on future attendance rates and performance at all levels? This all circles back to the proposed academies. How does ASD expect students who enlarge a below grade level in reading, writing, and math do well in any of the proposed academies? How does cutting instructional time from core classes benefit them? How does this in turn benefit our community? You as a school board have a tremendous amount of power, and I implore you to take a good hard look at the numbers and make the right decision, which is to stop the academies from happening at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me circle back to ask if Mr. Watson has come into the room yet. I'm not seeing any motion there. Ms. Posey, you will state your name for the record, and you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Rachel Posey, and I'm here to speak on the same topic as the previous speaker. I'm a parent of 2 ASD students. I have a 7th grader and a 9th grader, and I'm also an adjunct math professor at Alaska Pacific University. But I'm here today to express my strong opposition to the proposed academies of Anchorage. I have many concerns with the proposed plan, but today I'm specifically focusing on concerns related to the schedule changes that came out in the survey last Friday. I feel very strongly that ASD should not change the high school schedule from 6 to 7 or 8 classes. High school students need to see their teachers more than 2 to 3 times a week. If we transition from 6 to 8 periods, each class receives 25% less instructional time. The ASD propaganda is talking about total instructional minutes per semester for all classes, but with the new schedule options, but that does not address the time per class, which is decreasing. If we switch to an 8-class schedule, how can teachers and students be expected to cover that same material with 25% less time? High school students don't have the attention span to listen to 90 minutes of lecture. And in many cases, for example, math, it's critical to receive some instruction and go practice those concepts before learning additional material. So most likely these longer block classes will result in a regular length lecture and then being given additional class time to just work on homework. This means that it will be even more difficult for teachers to get through the full curriculum. For AP classes and other standardized curriculums, this is going to be especially problematic. Switching to 8 periods also places additional demands on our already overworked teachers. Currently, teachers at high school teach 5 out of 6 periods. If we move to an 8-period per semester schedule, our teachers are going to be teaching 6 and 7 classes, which at our current student load is another 30 to 40 students per class. So every paper or assignment you give is going to increase your grading, and you have that many more students for each teacher to get to know and try to help. We already know we have difficulty staffing and retaining teachers, so why are we going to further overload them? On top of these concerns, it will cost the district more money to move to 7 or 8 periods per semester. We're already facing a budget deficit and a state government that has shown it is not supportive of additional funding for public education. So why are we moving to a more expensive schedule? Obviously, these block schedule changes are being proposed specifically to facilitate the academies of Anchorage, but perhaps this is a further reason to not move forward with the academies. Lastly, I want to address the survey that ASD sent out last week. I was extremely frustrated when I attempted to provide feedback. The survey required respondents to pick from either a 7 or 8 period option. There was no option to select a 6-period schedule or to indicate that you didn't want to change. And you could only submit feedback if you picked one of the proposed changes. It was a mandatory question. So if ASD actually wants valid community feedback, they need to disregard that survey and send out a survey that provides an option to submit feedback while indicating that you don't want changes. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Beth Elliott, followed by Linda Smith. You'll state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Beth Elliott. Thank you to the school board and Superintendent Bryantt for the opportunity to testify this evening. I am the parent of 3 students in the Anchorage School District, 2 in middle school and 1 in high school. I have also previously been a substitute teacher and am actively involved in volunteering in my kids' schools. I am here tonight to voice my concerns about the implementation of the academies of Anchorage. I have had concerns for a while, but the bias scheduling survey sent out last week by ASD was the tipping point for me, and I realized I had to do more than just send emails. Already this year, I have seen the effects of ASD trying to prepare for the academies by forcing all kids to take the same classes, limiting advanced classes in middle school, attempts to reduce the number of middle school math choices, removing science choice for freshmen so all students take a watered-down version of biology, and plans to do the same with chemistry, and a very limited elective choice in high schools. My daughter is taking her 3rd art elective in a row due to no other electives being available. 2 of the art electives were the exact same class. The academies, as they have been presented on ASD's website, are extremely general and cover programs that can take years of post-secondary education to receive certifications and degrees in. For example, the South Academies are listed as the Academy of Leadership and Business, Academy of Emerging Technology, which includes mechatronics, and Academy of Innovation in Health and Human Services. For example, how many kids and parents know what mechatronics is and will choose this pathway? What if only a couple kids choose a certain pathway and the rest of the students are forced into it because of ASD balancing numbers? What classes will be taught in each of these academies and their associated pathways, and what certifications will students receive? Where are the teachers that are qualified to teach mechanical, electrical, and software engineering for the mechatronics pathway? What certifications do teachers need to teach each pathway, and how is ASD training and hiring the necessary staff to successfully implement the academies? Where is the curriculum coming from for teachers to teach the various pathways? Are they being trained now so they are ready to start teaching new classes next year? Not only is implementation of the academies a huge concern, funding of the academies is also a major challenge, especially in the current political atmosphere and Alaska's budget constraints. How is ASD going to pay for this enormous program? How will you purchase the supplies needed to teach the many pathways? How will you pay to train teachers? How will you pay for the additional staff needed? How will you transport students when the pathway they want is at another school? The new costs of the district are overwhelming, and at the same time, all we hear about is budget cuts year after year. As a parent, the only information I am being provided is the pretty charts, brief emails, and glossy websites. ASD's limited engagement of parents and students feels disingenuous, and like ASD does not want us to know the real plans and the effects of the academies. In summary, why is ASD forcing a one-size-fits-all, expensive, understaffed, unplanned program on the entire district? Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Linda Smith, followed by Alyssa Wardwell. You will state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
My name is Linda Smith. I'm a parent of 2 ASD high school students who are part of the service seminar program. I feel compelled to come today to express my strong opposition to the proposed high school bell schedule changes as reflected in the ASD survey sent out last week. It is my understanding that these changes are required to support the proposed academies model, and therefore this is also to register my opposition to ASD moving forward with that plan. First, the survey did not provide an option to leave the schedule at 6 classes. Because the survey deliberately guided people to vote positively for one of the new options, I don't believe that this creates meaningful or credible data that can be used from the survey in the current form. Second, the schedules are carving classroom time away from core academic classes. Each class has about 20% less instructional time overall. And while one could add more classes, the obvious result is that each resulting class would cover less, have less academic and education rigor, be less inspiring, interesting, or useful. This is demonstrated by ASD's Biology for All approach this year and the proposed new chemistry curriculum. Less depth, less homework, and less preparation for higher learning. There seems to be the focus on graduation rate metrics at the expense of actually providing quality education. Third, most high school learning opportunities such as math, writing, science, foreign language, and music benefit from short and frequent instructional events. There are a few class types such as discussion-based literature or history classes, such as the service seminar program, or the occasional science lab that benefits from a longer work period. But even with the existing bell schedule with block periods Tuesday through Thursday, teachers have expressed frustration that it detracts from effective and efficient learning and teaching. The longer periods are too long to hold attention, and the overall result is less material covered and learned in a week. Does it likely decrease homework, as your cited research summary states? Sure, but only because the additional time is no longer useful for instruction and the kids do their homework in class. And the teachers state that this reduces their ability to cover the breadth and depth of their subject matters. If I could advocate for a schedule change, I suggest reverting to the 2022-2023 version with 6 classes and no blocks. But barring that, please do not change the existing bell schedule. I support the development of electives and providing more opportunities for students to explore and learn about different career paths. And I agree that ASD could do more to support students to have meaningful skills and paths after high school. But this Academy's plan, with its one-size-fits-all curriculum focus and a bell schedule redesign that further increases class sizes and decreases instruction time per class, is not an enhancement. It directly hampers students and families who seek rigorous, meaningful academics to prepare them for post-secondary learning. Please do not support changes in the bell schedule.
Your time has expired. Thank you very much. Alyssa Wardwell, followed by Felicia Nichols, who will be telephonic. You will state your name. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Alyssa Wardwell. Good evening. I'm a high school teacher in this district, and I'm here tonight to speak about the upcoming move to the Academies of Anchorage, and specifically the survey that was released to the public for input on the 7 or 8 period schedule. I'm disappointed that the district is only now figuring out what this move will look like, and I'm even more disappointed that they're asking the community for input without providing the community all of the important metrics to consider. The chart created by the district shows that an 8 period schedule will provide students with more total instructional time at a lower cost than a 7 period schedule. And if I were a community member without experience in a high school, this decision would be a no-brainer. However, there are other metrics that are not being included. Though the district does include the loss of total instructional minutes per class, this is not an effective measurement of the total loss of class time. And a better way to consider the impact would be to say that an 8 period schedule will mean a 20% decrease in contact time in each class. This means in our math and reading and social studies classes, we will have the same content to cover, but 20% less class time to cover it. For community members who choose to look through the slides specific to the schedule choices, they see 4 examples of specific schedules. Without experience in a high school classroom, I'm worried people will not know the implications of these different schedules. As a teacher, I look at these choices and see the possibility of a huge decrease in the number of days a week that I have instructional time with students. An 8 period schedule means that I have direct contact with each of my students just 5 out of every 10 school days. Our current schedule, the 6 period schedule, allows me contact 8 out of every 10 school days. This is a 37.5% decrease in the percent of days a week that I get to see students. An 8-period schedule will also likely mean an increased total caseload for staff, as we'll be teaching an additional class, but with a 20% decrease to planning time. All of this will negatively affect student outcomes in their core educational classes. I personally know teachers and counselors who've been asking questions for over a year. They've been asking to see an example master schedule. This has not been provided. They've been asking how many additional teachers a school will need, what the additional cost will be, how this will affect our teaching load. All of these are questions that are answered in vague, reassuring terms that it won't cost much. There won't be a great need for more teachers. It's really just rescaling the system. Now the public is being asked to weigh in on a decision that should have been decided over a year ago with budget and student outcomes in mind. Teachers, school staff, and administrators are on the front line of these issues every day, experiencing how broad policy decisions impact our classrooms and our ability to do our job. And these decisions should be made with high value placed on our input, experience, and knowledge. As an expert in my field with 17 years of teaching experience, it's clear to me that given these two choices, the 7-period schedule will do less damage than the 8-period schedule, and this option will protect more instruction.
Time has expired. Thank you very much. Next, we have Felicia Nichols telephonically, followed by Hattie Schmidtkoffer in person. And Ms. Nichols seems to be not online. Ms. Schmidtkoffer, followed by Sally Bennett. And if you will state your name probably more accurately than I did for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Sure. Hattie Schmidtkoffer. I'm here tonight to discuss True Game and banning True Game from using the ASD facilities. I'm a mother of a student athlete, 4.0 student athlete at Bagage Middle School, vice president of the National Junior Honor Society. And now with the change, we either have to pay more money to get private gym time, which many of us probably can't afford, or we have to, find gas money to get out to the valley so she can keep playing. So I'm asking you guys to consider this decision that you made and reversing it so that we can allow student athletes that deserve the opportunity to continue to grow in the True Game program. They're a nonprofit. There's many other nonprofits that aren't being excluded. We don't really know why, nor do we really need to know why or what happened with Jharrett Sconiers in the service basketball program. I'm here today to advocate for the kids all across the state. There's 1,500 student athletes that participate in this program, 700 within the Anchorage community. A lot of these are low-income families, and they're not going to be able to continue with the program. So you're going to have athletes turning to the streets, not, participating in sports. All of these things that we know are very good for them. So I ask you guys to please reconsider that decision and allow True Game to continue to provide services for low-income families and allow them, the student athletes to, practice and play games in your gyms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll circle back to see if Harvey Watson is in the room yet. Not seeing anyone moving that way. And if Felicia Nichols has not connected. Next, we have Sally Bennett, followed by Erica Monahan. And if you will state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Sally Bennett, and I'm here as the parent of 3 ASD students to voice my concern about the change to the high school bell schedule. The infographic that was sent out to parents on Friday looks nice. More opportunity for credits towards graduation, more choice, but that middle line in the table is what concerns me. The line labeled total instructional minutes per class per semester. That line shows how much time a student would spend with a teacher over the course of the semester. That line shows that moving to a 7-period schedule will reduce contact time by over 9 hours per class. Moving to an 8-period schedule will reduce contact hours by over 14 hours per class. All of the research you have cited has noted the benefits to changing the schedule include improved student-teacher relationships and deeper learning. I am confused on how those benefits will be achieved with less class time. According to the information provided by ASD, students will continue to receive the supports they need to succeed. As of today, the school district has 16 open middle school teaching positions, 12 open high school teaching positions, and 45 open high school or special education teaching positions. On top of that, there are 109 open classroom support positions. Our students are currently not getting the support they need. Teachers are stretched thin. Adding more to the schedule and expectations of teachers and students is not a productive solution. When reading the research summary provided by the district, there are a few things that stand out to me. One, it seems very clear that the research does not lean one way or the other. All of the positive research continually mentions block scheduling, which is something our high schools are already doing. The original flyer says, and I quote, "The research for AB block scheduling in high schools presents a mixed bag of potential benefits and drawbacks with no definitive recommendation for widespread adoption of a 7 or 8 period schedule." Another thing I noticed was that one of your sources was miscited. It was an op-ed piece from the New York Times. The quote that is miscited in the research summary does not appear in the article that was mentioned. The conclusion on the detailed research report linked on the ASD website has a highlight that says, "No studies on which schedule is better." There's also an asterisk with the note that looking for research that is connected to attendance and scheduling. It seems that the research being used by the district to support the bell schedule change has been rushed and half finished. I urge the board and the district not to change the high school schedule and to give our students time to adjust to the current changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Erica Monahan telephonically, and she is online. I believe it's *6 to unmute. And if you will state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, good evening. My name is Erica Monahan. Thank you for the time. I am a parent of 2 high school bound Anchorage children and a classroom educator. I've worked as a teacher in a high school program dedicated to keeping vulnerable high school students in school with more of a focus on career readiness, a component of the academies. I have been a visiting professor at a highly selective Ivy League college. I'm currently a tenured professor at a large R1, Research 1 state university, in which capacity I have been invited to be the associate director of an internal university program. This is all to say that I have over 2 decades of classroom experience and substantial perspective on the administrative world of education. And with that, I want to make brief, aphoristic comments on 3 topics. 1, rigor. 2, optimizing the schedule for learning or the use of time, which I'll actually skip because it's been so well covered by previous commenters. And 3, being wary of administrative creep. 1, we must not slip on rigor. My substantial teaching experience, my substantial experience teaching students that range across the spectrum in skills and academic preparedness leads me to object to any initiative to combine STEM and other curricula into one course under the very palatable guise of inclusivity. This approach places far too great a burden on teachers. It ill serves all of the students in the classroom. But the detriments that go most easily ignored in this approach are those to the students at the higher performing end of the spectrum. Their lack of achievement remains an intangible metric. I don't know what the future looks like, but I trust that a future thriving Alaskan economy is going to be one in which there are robust service, manufacturing, and knowledge economy sectors. We want to give our Alaskans the best opportunities to compete for really making strong steps in higher education, in a thriving knowledge economy, so they can return to Alaska and help our state thrive. Could say more about that. We want to build the skills and knowledge in school. As I understand it, the impetus behind the schedule reconfiguration is to accommodate the academies, which I don't think is a sound path for Anchorage. God willing, our students will not cease their learning on the last day of 12th grade, nor will they know for what they are bound. The science of learning is showing us that the way to acquire knowledge is to have knowledge. And
Your time has expired. Thank you. And check back to see if Felicia Nichols has signed on, has not. And again, I believe Harvey Watson has not come into the room. Next on our list, we have Jeff Lentfer in person, and followed by Manny Acuna. You will state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Is Jeff Lentfer. I am here to support Coach Jackie Scornias and his True Game program again. Getting blindsided by this, it sounds like. I've had 2 kids go through his program, the True Game, and played for and against him, and I've coached against him and coached with him. He does travel ball in the summer. That's something else that hasn't really been talked about yet. That's where they have an opportunity to play at high level tournaments across different tournaments. My daughter got a Division I scholarship playing with him this year. And so it does make a difference. Now, not everybody's going to have that level or that opportunity, but what you see when you go to one of his practices, kids from all over Anchorage and the Valley and Fairbanks and even up to Teague and Barrow come down and they have a chance to play and compete together. And when they do that, they get together, and it's not this adverse relationship with Service versus East. It's everybody's playing together, and they're getting kids to play. Now, when I was coaching comp, I tried to get gym time from y'all, and you guys are huge bureaucracy, and I'm sure you got rules for what you have. But getting a permit means you got to get a nonprofit. You need to get insurance. It's a drill, and then you got to get schedules, and it's really hard to do that. Jacques has figured out how to do that. And I can tell you, from my experience is the custodians, some are great, some are very ornery, and you have to be very particular and careful with your interaction with them. I don't know what happened with the situation, but to eliminate his ability to have a program affects a lot of kids. I'm confident him being an entrepreneur and passionate about the game, he'll figure out a way to make something work, but it will be more expensive and less accessible. And I think that's detrimental. These are community facilities, and this has a huge impact on folks across the community. And I really would encourage y'all to encourage the administrative team to look at what happened and make sure it's fair, because I don't know, but it does have a big impact. And that's all I have to say about that. Now, I got a minute left. I may as well use it. Regarding the academies, I don't know much about them, but I can tell you as a business owner and a community member, I love the idea of getting kids ready to learn something that's valuable. And maybe they'll do better at school if they're passionate about something they're learning, as opposed to having to take courses and forcing kids to get to secondary education or to go on to higher education. University is not for most people. Get them a chance to learn different things, get passionate about something they may like. And I don't know about hours of contact, I don't know about that kind of thing, but the idea of having kids doing something that they may be bent towards or passionate about is a fantastic idea. It's the first thing I've heard from y'all in a long time. And I thought, man, this is pretty cool. So appreciate you guys doing that. You guys got a lot to work out. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Manny Acuna, followed by Michael Patterson. You will state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Manny Acuna. Waka, my name is Manny Acuna, and I am the Academic Policy Committee Board President for the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School. I'm speaking to you all today to raise awareness of our school and to ensure ANCCS doesn't slip through the cracks and gets forgotten. As you all may already know, we are currently residing at the old Abbott Loop Elementary School on 8427 Lake Otis Parkway, and we love it. We currently have a place we can call home that is safe and functional for our students and staff. Since moving in, our students' numbers have increased drastically, and a giant weight has been lifted off our shoulders, at least for the time being. The APC board and our nonprofit, the Friends of ANCCS, have been focused and diligently working on acquiring a new facility for our ANCCS family. My team and I would like to extend an invitation to the Anchorage School District Board and our current plans of building our dream school one day, so that there is transparency and that all of you can have a better understanding of what some of the hurdles we are currently facing. I'm also hoping our partnership can provide us with insight on how we can better execute our Building Capital campaign. We have been working so hard to make this dream a reality, but with increasing costs because of inflation, this dream may take longer than anticipated. I know we have until the 2028 school year to figure out where to go next, but extending our stay would be ideal. Our community is tired of moving, and it wouldn't make sense to move to another school if we were only another year or two away from building our dream school. I'll use the rest of my time to also invite the public and the rest of the board. Next week, we have a fall festival at our school. I'm building a haunt. It's a one-of-a-kind. It's Alaska Native lore themed, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope you guys can make it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Michael Patterson followed, I can't read the first name, but the last name is Pennington. If you will state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Michael Patterson. I am the Vice President for the Alaska Native Culture Charter School Academic Policy Committee, and I'm just echoing what our board president just said. I am a parent member. I have a 3rd grader at ANCCS, and I love this school. It is such a unique environment and a unique community in terms of the connectedness of the students, the connectedness of the families, the parents, the staff, the board. And, you know, I would be remiss not to mention to the board and the superintendent that yesterday was Indigenous Peoples Day. And given the history of ANCCS being displaced year after year after year after year, and as before we had Abbott essentially being put in a hallway of Betty Davis High School, where the yard, I mean, their playground for the elementary school kids was basically a utility yard. And so, yes, everything that Manny just stated in terms of the founders, the families, the community, we want our own building. We want something that is truly representative of our community. However, because of it's the economy, and with inflation and things like that, it is more expensive. And it would be honestly an injustice and a tragedy that when the 2028 school year comes up, that we have to essentially displace this school once again. And so essentially, I think what we're trying to do today is just reach out to the school district and say, please don't forget us. And let's start having this conversation now about what we need to do and how the school district can help us. Because, you know, like the last time I came here, I never give government officials compliments, but I am truly impressed with how the school district has helped this school. And I think you all wronged a historical, you all righted a historical wrong. And it would be incredibly sad that in 2028, and not at the fault of anyone on the board or any of the families or any of the students or staff, because we are really working hard to provide, to fulfill this dream that the founders started with, that essentially history repeats itself. And I really want to encourage, when people talk about Indigenous Peoples Day, which was yesterday, that it's not history. It happens all the time here in Alaska. History is happening right now. And, you know, with ANCCS, there's a real opportunity to right a historical wrong. And really, it's a process of decolonization. And so I really appreciate the board's time and the superintendent's time. And you guys run the smoothest meetings in the city. So thank you.
I won't take any credit for that. Ms. Pennington, if you will state your name for the record, you have 3 minutes.
Brandy Pennington, Waka. I am a board member for the Alaska Native Charter Cultural School. I also have head congestion, so please excuse any inconsistency in my tonality or fluctuation. I want to echo the same sentiment as my fellow board members about how important community of the school is and less about the structure. Recently, I have enrolled my 2 children in the program because of the location. Abbott is a fantastic location for our family. It works well for many families. However, my concern that I'm bringing here to you today is about the actual building itself. And I know it seems sort of contradictory because we're effectively saying please allow us an extension. But at the same time, I want to share with you what resulted in my tenure on the board, if you will. 2 years ago, the school district sent out effectively a notification to all the parents saying that several schools would be closed down. I had the great fortune of connecting with someone within the executive realm of the district who then confided in me, stating that they never intended to close schools down, just one. And that the majority of this closure, it was just political theater. There are thousands of parents who showed up, took time away from their family and their work to beg that their school stayed open, when in reality, it was just about money. It was about, give us more money after our fiscal year started so we can keep this going, right? And so in this conversation, he said that Abbott Loop would be closed down because Abbott Loop wasn't safe for the children. Imagine my surprise when my children show up to participate in an activity, and Abbott Loop is being used as the full-time school for the Alaska Native children. Tell me how you would feel if it's not good enough for neighborhood children, but it's good enough for the Native kids. We can leave it there. We'll leave that conversation there. I'll let you think on it. But sitting in the library, watching some of the ceiling cave down tells me there's a problem. The reality is that Anchorage School District is just too big. It's too large. It's untenable. The municipal charter needs to be rewritten and it needs to be revised. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But for today, these children need a place to go. And they have been relocated so many times and it's not acceptable. It's very difficult to the program is wonderful. The families need to be served. I thank you for your time. I'm leaving with you the information I've given you, and I'm going to let you think about what can be done to make it right. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I do want to make the statement that if we considered a building unsafe for students, we would close it tonight. There are significant improvements that need to be made to Abbott Loop, but it was never considered a safety hazard to students. And that has been the case all along. I do want to circle back to see if Mr. Watson showed up. He was on the list for testimony. And Ms. Nichols was calling in, is not called in. I believe that completes our list of everyone who signed up to give testimony.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I'd move to suspend the rules to allow the superintendent to address the comments that we just heard. I found them incredibly troubling. It was double hearsay. So I'm not disparaging the witness in any way, shape, or form, but I think the comments, warrant a more direct response. And I appreciate your comments, but I'd like the superintendent be allowed the opportunity.
It's unusual for us to actually ask the administration to respond directly, but it has been requested that we suspend our rules to do that. I will ask Ms. Sullivan to call the roll and take a vote on whether we suspend the rules to ask the administration to explain the situation with the basketball program.
Actually, I'm talking about Abbott Loop.
I'm sorry.
But I wouldn't mind hearing about the basketball program too.
We rarely are prepared to respond immediately to either, but yes, in regards to Abbott Loop, if you will call.
Student Representative Pack?
Yes.
Member Higgins?
Yes.
Member Bellamy?
No.
Member Donnelly?
Yes.
Member Jacobs?
Yes.
Member Wilson?
Yes.
President Holloman?
Yes. Superintendent Bryantt, you're able.
Thank you. Member Donnelly, would you like to start with a specific question?
Yeah, Abbott Loop's in my neighborhood, and we have been watching the appropriateness of the safety of that school for many, many years, including putting funding in. The first year I was in on the board for a sprinkler system in there, but it was always clear from the municipal code that it was a safe school. there was never danger of students. We were never advised of that. In fact, just the opposite. In fact, the issue of the sprinklers was one of building preservation and not for safety of the students. So it's really troubling to hear, the allegation that somebody from the administration had represented that it was an unsafe school. And I'd just like to give you the opportunity to respond to that. And also that the allegation that the administration never intended to seek the closure of additional schools, and it was all some sort of sham to justify the closing of Abbott Loop, because this board spent a lot of time and worked really hard to consider each school individually, and really it was a very, very emotional and difficult thing for this community to go through that process. And I believe there was a very legitimate consideration of each school that was proposed to be closed, and the board made a very measured and careful decision about the final decision. So.
Thank you, Member Donnelly. Through the president, I'll start with the second question. So I agree that's false. We were actually, all 8 of us were working on this exact conversation of right-sizing our footprint, and we made the difficult decision to close Abbott Loop, and that's where the conversation ends. We seriously considered every single building that we put before the board, and we're going through that same process moving forward through our right-sizing initiative this year. With that said, the first question you asked is around, is Abbott Loop a safe facility to use? And the answer is yes. But I want to bring us back to our conversation 2 years ago, which was the fact that we actually needed to seek the fire marshal's approval to use that building for student use because of the unique nature of that fire suppression system. After the school board voted to close Abbott Loop, we sought approval from the fire marshal for the purpose of an extension, which was granted for 5 years, at which point we had a conversation with ANCCS, knowing that with this extension, it would provide them a 5-year runway to figure out a path forward and to eventually land in whatever building is of interest to them, in which case it sounded like it was a building that would not be ANCCS, ideally some building that's built on some other land. I forget the exact details, but that's the gist of my recollection. This is not a formal board item, so I'm very limited in what I'm able to share right now, but I will offer Jim Anderson an opportunity to fill in gaps I may have.
Sure. So, one, if we just wanted to close one school, there would have been one school on the list. I think the board will recall that 2 years ago, we had lost nearly 5,000 students in a decade. We're now, certainly much more than that. Second, I briefed numerous times about Abbott Loop was the only school in the district. There were several at many stages that did not have sprinkler systems, but Abbott Loop didn't have a sprinkler system. So what was done was an enhanced fire detection system that was better than most elementary schools. And that's why the fire marshal, before the current fire marshal, had allowed school to operate, because Dr. Bryantt is correct. The students were never at risk. The fire drills, everything else, because of the enhanced fire detection system, all of us were confident that the students were going to get out. What was at risk was the entire facility if it caught fire. So I can tell you, there's already rumors all around the district that we have a list of closed schools. And honestly, if there was such a list, I would know. And so would Dr. Bryantt. There is no list of what's on this year's schools. So dealing with rumor control around the district, it happens all day, every day, in every different area around the district. So I don't know where the information came from that was discussed, but Abbott Loop was not safe to operate, and it's not safe today, it's not unsafe today for ANCCS, but frankly, to put in a sprinkler system, we really need to raise the roof, put a whole new roof on it. And yet we have so many facilities, almost the same number of facilities we had in 2010. And since 2010, we've lost over 6,000 students. So, those are the facts. if we wanted one school, we would have gone for just one school, but none of it was personal toward that school.
Thank you very much for clarifying remarks. Member Higgins.
I appreciate this conversation a great deal. I remember probably, I forgot how many years ago, I get tired of this, but I remember a review of all the charter schools at one point. It said, looking at the demographics data of it, the Alaska Native Charter School was the top performing because their scores compared to Alaska Natives throughout the school district, which are much higher. So the success there of that school is to be applauded in regards to outcomes. I mean, that's really what it's coming down to. And he had a presentation this summer that emphasized, this came from the Council of Great City Schools, but anyway, that having the introduction or the inclusion of the cultural issues addresses mental health and academics improvement. So continuing this is critical. When we talk about the schools and the conditions we got a lot of charter schools out there. This school is a lot safer than renting a space that's not going to be safe in case of an earthquake, not going to have the same protections or the like. You know, at one time, Abbott Loop, they thought they had to rebuild the school in order to meet the new code requirements. That was dismissed. I still remember the presentation in regards to that at the community council, that they need to make an improvement to it to meet the code. And unless we do that, the school needs to close at some point. I understand that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Are there more comments by board members? If not, we will move on from this.
Mr. President, can we get a 5 minute at ease, please? Thank you.
I'm sorry, say again.
5 minute at ease.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We will take a 5 minute at ease. We'll be right back. think we might start doing a little mid-meeting break every so often. I'm just kidding. That concludes our public comment. There is written public comment in board docs. I want to make sure members are aware. To please go check that as well. That brings us to section E, the consent agenda. I would entertain a motion to
Move to
adopt it.
approve the consent agenda as listed.
Thank you. And is there a second? And
Second.
seconded by member Donovan.
Seconded.
Any Okay. All those in favor of adopting the consent agenda, I'll just ask to say aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Chair, we received guidance on Robert's rules. We need to do a voice vote.
Yeah. I was going to try to give Ms. Sullivan a break, but you'll have to call roll.
Member Wilson,
Yes.
Member Jacobs,
Yes.
Member Bellamy, Member Donley,
Yes.
Member Higgins,
Oh. This is on the consent agenda. To approve the consent agenda?
President Holloman,
Yes. You have approved the consent agenda. That brings us to action items. The first item doesn't have a memorandum number, but it is in reference to the student hearing, which we reviewed in executive session. I'll ask Ms. Sullivan to call the roll.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the unnumbered ASD action item F1 to approve the reinstatement from an expulsion of the student associated with ASD incident number 1365779 as discussed in executive session.
Thank you very much. Seconded by member Bellamy. That issue is before you now and is not subject to discussion. Ask Ms. Sullivan to call the roll again.
Member Bellamy,
Yes.
Member Higgins,
Yes.
Member Jacobs,
Yes.
Member Wilson,
Yes.
Member Donley,
Yes.
President Holloman,
Yes. You have approved reinstatement in that case. Next item is ASD memorandum number 052. I would entertain a motion to adopt.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve ASD memorandum number 052, approval of contract extension for Superintendent Dr. Jharrett Bryantt, to approve addendum number 2 to extend Superintendent Dr. Jharrett Bryantt's contract by 1 additional year through June 30, 2027, with all other contractual terms to remain the same.
Second.
And seconded by member Bellamy. Discussion by the board.
Mr. Chair, as the mover of the motion, I'll say that this is I view this as, and the things in the memorandum I believe are all true. I don't know the origin of them because the memorandum came to me partially written, but they look very much like sections of a superintendent evaluation. And I think Dr. Bryantt has done great work. I think that the contract addendum, which includes no financial compensation, but does provide an extra year in his contract to the maximum allowable by an Alaska statute, is not only reasonable, but a bargain compared to the superintendent contracts, which are all publicly available in similar districts. The fact that Dr. Bryantt continues to serve and do really great work while putting aside and focusing on student outcomes and putting aside financial aspects of his contract is not only appreciated, but unfortunately necessary due to the funding challenges that we discuss at just about every meeting. So thank you, Dr. Bryantt, for your service. I think this probably and should have really been attached to your last evaluation, which typically happens in the spring. With that said, I hope you agree that it is better late than never. So thank you. I'll be voting yes.
Member Higgins.
Thank you. I've worked with 5 superintendents. I guess I'm the long-term one here. 6. I have to think about that again. And I have to say that the relationship with the support, the communications with the superintendent and the board, it's the best it's ever been from my standpoint. It's one of of welcoming the information, not being critical, looking at trying to support what the board wants, and that's a lot better. When I came on, the relationship between us and the staff was strained, to say the least, and there's been significant improvement. And the biggest thing is that the board's pushing for change, which is something administrations have often fought top to bottom, and we're getting the support we want. And so the board takes ownership for that. So I appreciate the leadership. I appreciate superintendents willing to accept this extension. It means a lot to us and that sort of approach. And I think we're putting kids first. So thank you, Superintendent, for what you're doing. And I appreciate the continued service. Thank you.
Member Bellman, did you have?
Yes, thank you. Just to add, I will be, of course, supporting the addendum. I think we have lots of work still to be done. And I think the more consistent we are, the better the outcomes will be for our students. And I think the thing that I'm most proud of is the fact that Dr. Bryantt will listen. He may not agree, but he will listen, and he will think about whatever it is that we're talking about. And he's absolutely not afraid to come back and say, you know, I've reconsidered. So we don't have all the answers as a board, but I do think under his leadership, we do have access to outstanding leadership. And it's just getting started. So with all of the changes that we're currently dealing with, he's doing exactly what the board asked him to do. He didn't just come up with all this stuff by himself. And so I think just providing some consistency over these next 3 tough years is really, really in the best interest of our students. So thank you, Dr. Bryantt. I will be a yes.
And I will note for the public, we don't usually take up revisions to the superintendent's contract except once a year at evaluation. The motivation for me personally is that we are asking the superintendent to undertake something that is inherently unpopular, specifically the naming of schools for possible closure. And over the course of doing that, the board will change. I feel like it's a reasonable thing for the board to offer some insulation to the superintendent for doing what we ask that will be upsetting to people in the community. It'll be a tough thing for a lot of families to lose their neighborhood school, but in terms of adjusting our footprint, we feel like that's something that has to be done. So I support that as well. If there's no other comments, I'll ask Ms. Sullivan to call the roll.
Member Donnelly?
No.
Member Bellamy?
Yes.
Member Jacobs?
Yes.
Member Wilson?
Yes.
Member Higgins?
Did he leave again?
Member President Holloman?
Yes. And the motion carries. That concludes our action items. That brings us to the non-action items on our agenda. Are there any? Okay. So we'll ask if there is comment on any of the non-action items. And I'll start by mentioning we did put an item on here without it going through our usual process. The Assembly is asking for our support in a resolution regarding the sale of unregulated diet pills and muscle building supplements. There's a bit of a time constraint on that as it's something they're trying to prepare and get to trying to react to quickly. So we will take that up at our next meeting at the beginning of November. Okay. Member Wilson brought this. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, please. So I received communication from Assemblymember Bronga, and the reason I asked that we speak about it tonight is because the Assembly will be addressing it on October 22nd, and so we are a little bit short on time in regards to responding to it. The ask is for a letter of support from the school board in the continued process. So the resolution that she will be putting forward is for the Anchorage Assembly to urge the state legislators to join other states in restricting sales of unregulated diet pills and muscle building supplements to minors in Alaska. So again, her ask is a letter of support from the school board. My ask, and I wanted to bring it up this evening because my ask from other school board members is to see, once I write the letter, is to see if other board members would be willing to sign on to it.
And a question to Member Wilson, do you have a letter that you want to propose to us to sign on to, or?
I do not have a letter ready this evening because I just received the communication. So I will have the letter, and any board member who is interested in signing on, of course, will have the opportunity to read the letter first and choose to sign on at that point or not.
Okay.
So I'm
if
not
understanding
asking
this
for
correctly, we
the
won't
board
take
members to
action on
vote.
this tonight, but it is there for discussion.
Correct.
Okay. And then if members wish to voluntarily sign onto it in support later this week, that would go to the Assembly, but it would not be an official action by the board, as I understand it right now. Member Bellamy?
It would be helpful for me to have an actual copy of the actual resolution from the Assembly. I think I may have seen it, but it's not attached to the agenda, is it? No.
It is not. I can forward that out.
Okay.
There
So
it should have been in an email.
I think I did see it in the email, but it wasn't. I didn't know if it was the same one in the email that we're talking about tonight. So, and just question for Member Wilson. Member Wilson, so our meeting on the 31st would be too late. Is that what that would be
Correct.
too late? Okay.
Correct. The
right.
request is prior to the 22nd of October.
Well, I would be willing to sign on personally.
Thank you.
And I
Thanks.
would support that as well.
Mr. Chair, I'll sign on. Thank you.
Okay.
I support it.
So I will ask Member Wilson to circulate that when she has it prepared, and members can respond as they wish individually.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that Member Wilson provide the letter to Ms. Sullivan, who can then send the letter out to members as an FYI, so we're not conversing through email. But I don't. Besides that, I think that the process is sound. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, if Member Wilson, if you'll forward that to Ms. Sullivan, she will distribute it to us. Thank you.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Any other discussion on non-action items? Seeing, hearing none. We do not have anyone else signed up for public comment on agenda or non-agenda or non-action items. That brings us to the superintendent update. Dr. Bryantt.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few remarks today. First off, I want to sincerely thank the board for the opportunity to serve an additional year within the Anchorage School District. I truly am living the superintendent dream in the sense that I have an incredible team of school board members who are supporting me as my supervisors, but also an incredible staff of people who really make this work possible. And I think it goes without saying that, I moved thousands of miles away to be here because I really wanted to make a difference. And I'm not here to be a seat warmer. I'm really here because I was drawn to the board's vision to create positive change for our community. And I think that we have a strong set of goals and guardrails that we need to meet. And I think consistency on our leadership team is going to be a huge asset in getting one step closer to doing what we need to do. With that said, the next 3 years are going to be tough. In fact, even the next 3 months are going to be really tough on us because we'll be reviewing a really tough budget situation. We're going to complete the process of moving forward in right sizing by releasing names of individual buildings. And of course, a number of other changes, including advocacy. So I want to talk a little bit about those things. So, this year has been great. We had a strong start to the year, and we're making progress on most of the initiatives that we've been talking about for the past 2 years. For the community's sake, I do want to let you all know that earlier this afternoon, the administration presented to the board a brief on the right sizing plan. And for the second time, we had the opportunity to preview a rubric and a set of guardrails for how we'll go about our right sizing plan. And we've passed that milestone, and we'll be moving forward with using that tool to conduct an analysis of our facilities to begin identifying facilities for the right sizing plan. And I will just state up front that this is going to be the most emotional part of the process as we look at specific buildings, but it's a necessary part. And we are doing some things strategically different than we did 2 years ago. And the first change is that our entire reason for doing this is driven on elevating levels of academic service. This is more than just facilities. It's really taking control of our footprint, given the unstable and insufficient funding from the state. This is our one measure that is within our locus control to finally restore services in our buildings after many years of reducing services to our buildings. So while this is painful, the path that we're approaching, I think, is positive. And like I've shared, if we did move forward with right sizing and we're not there yet, we do have an opportunity, again, to elevate those levels of service and to really prepare our buildings for the future of ASD. And right sizing is not all about consolidating buildings. It's also about reimagining the ways that we use our space to meet the needs of today. Think about the the childcare challenges that we're seeing across the city, and what if we can utilize some of our building space to facilitate that community need. That's just the tip of the iceberg, and we have some very long work ahead, but I do think that the rationale is enough to at least move forward in this process as we continue to deliberate this plan. With that said, part of the reason why we're in this situation of making some changes is because we need to grapple with the fact that our funding situation continues to be inadequate. It's really allowing us, it's being counter to our achievement of goals and guardrails. So we will be advocating for more resources from the state. So for the community's awareness, we aren't giving up on that. We're advocating for our legislative priorities, and specifically a permanent increase to the base student allocation is what I'll be advocating for. But we will need support in Juneau to get to the finish line. And I want to manage community expectations that when you have 9 years of flat funding through a base student allocation paired with unpredictable levels of one-time funding, even a substantial BSA increase could still mean our spending power is less than what it was in 2017. So we have a long road ahead, but we're going to be advocating more and more intensively than we ever have, because that's one path towards meeting our goals and also really tackling this crisis that we see when it comes to retaining our educators. We have fantastic teachers that I urgently want to keep in our district. There are certainly working condition things that we can work on right now, which is why I'm proud of the work that we're doing through our recruitment and retention task force. But another piece of that will be assurance from the state that we have a path of sustainable revenue that we can then direct to our fantastic teachers and support staff who are with our students every day. That's my vision. That's why I'm going to be advocating very hard these next couple months. Aside from right sizing, looking ahead, next month we'll be providing the board with our formal recommendation for the 2025 school bond. And in addition to that, we have a number of work sessions that we'll be scheduling over the next couple of months. I would prepare for some more 2-hour sessions because we do have that much to cover on topics ranging from budget development to some details that was requested earlier today, but this has been in the works for a few weeks, on providing the board with information on the Academy's scheduling plan and also the opt-out provision, so the board is fully aware of what the pros and cons are of this path forward, and why we feel this is the right direction to take to facilitate the transformation that so many are rooting for, which are the Academies of Anchorage. So with that said, I'll go ahead and conclude there.
Thank you very much. Board comments. I will start to my right with Member Bellamy. Yep.
Let's see. So I just want to thank the Communications Committee and our Communications Department for the work that's gone into our Lunch and Learn, which we're going to have tomorrow. Looking forward to that. Other than that, I think we did announce already that our next round of meetings would be the 31st, our finance, communications, and governance. That's all I've got. Thank you.
And as if she were sitting in her chair, Member Wilson, did you have comments?
I do not. Thank you. No comments this evening.
Thank you. Member Donnelly?
Well, as an alumni and a former football player at Diamond, although I didn't have a very distinguished career at all, I just want to do a big shout out to the Diamond football team and wish them luck this weekend. I think they're working on an undefeated season, so that's pretty extraordinary.
Member Jacobs?
No comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Higgins?
I've got a lot of time here. I won't use it all. First of all, just my congratulations to ASD for the superintendent's continued extension. I have, like I said, worked with a number of different superintendents I remember one time we had a policy review come in front and said, should we make a change? And the response from administration was, well, that's not a problem. We don't follow that policy anyway. Well, we don't have that problem right now, and it's a big improvement, and I appreciate that because that's the kind of relationship we should have. In regards to the speakers, the basketball program, we can't get involved in individual employee issues. The municipal charter says we have to have a merit system standards, and merit system standards says we can't be like the old Chicago where the elected officials get involved in hiring, firing, and consequences for people below an executive level. We're prohibited from doing it unless the state law requires it. State law requires us to approve personnel actions that people get promoted and terminated and new hires. So we do that, and we have some other obligations. But I'm confident that the superintendent will look into whatever issue is there and try to make sure. I know that all these different programs, basketball, career technology, you name it, there were connections here to students that keeps them engaged. And that keeps them in school. It helps them be successful. It motivates them. It means a lot. I heard the comments here tonight, and I appreciate that a great deal. Heard a lot of comments tonight on the academies. The 7-8 schedule is the big issue that we're going to be having to deal with. I will tell you that I still remember in 2016 or 2015, the issue came up that they wanted to have a 7 schedule. And I remember the research I did into it, and we got involved, the board did. We met with the principals directly on that one. And the issue is that studies show that 7 and 8 can be very successful with good outcomes. But it also made it clear in order to be successful, you have to have staff buy-in. You've got to get that beforehand, or it is not successful. So that's going to be, to me, the challenge we have. We've got to listen to the staff. We've got to listen to the principals. I've been listening to them. We've got to listen to staff. But we need to be open about that and address concerns that they have to be successful. Because the same thing with curriculum changes. If you don't get buy-in, you don't get the support, it isn't successful. And the studies show that. We did research on that at that time. The Abbott Loop is a big issue to me. It's very close. to where I am and where I actually live, and so I'm very familiar with it. I see the involvement with the state. I think I'm glad that APC came in here, the policy committee for the Alaska Native Charter School, in regards to it. It's difficult for these charter schools to be unsafe schools. I'm going to call them unsafe because after an earthquake or other issues and you're renting property, it's not the same as an ASD facility. Our ASD facilities are built with institutional standings. They're a lot safer than schools that otherwise are there. And as I said, I feel a lot of close connections to wanting to see the Alaska Native Charter Schools successful. And they don't have the resources or any other options out there. So in 2 years, if they can't pull it off, then that's going to be a real difficult problem, and they know they can't. So I look forward to that being an issue that the board will be reviewing and discussing. And the last thing is I've just been visiting more schools, watching the conditions of some of the schools physically, even the newer ones with some of the issues and concerns, and we deal with the bonds coming up. But, you know, we're going to need the public support again for that type of issues in line with it. And I got to tell you, it's for the board visiting these schools, it's such a great reception. I appreciate the principal, and I've had a chance to meet staff there. And in each and every case, I'm very appreciative of that type of relationship. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I do want to echo that the board wants to be in a position to do more for our charters and our alternative programs. The continued lack of a meaningful increase in the BSA is kind of tightening constraints on our charters as well as our neighborhood schools. And we certainly will try to do what we can to have all of our kids in good buildings with all the resources they need. I'll go slightly off topic and say this past week I spent in Western North Carolina, where I grew up, and it really was stunning. The actual area is not as populated as Anchorage, but it's far bigger than Fairbanks. If you can imagine a large metropolitan area like that that's lost electricity, lost water, lost internet, lost cell service for 4 or 5 days. There are literally places that were just washed away, communities that were built along river valleys that acted as funnels for an incredible amount of water, places that had never been flooded before, that were 20, 25 feet above flood stage of a creek. And the school district there is shut down, obviously, looking at a massive number of porta potties and actually drilling wells on site so that it can open buildings again. I'm kind of grateful to be back and be struggling with a budget and academic items that really do kind of relate to education, rather than literally no horizon at the moment of when they will be able to resume classes in their buildings. The water system for a major town is just wiped out, and they don't have a date yet for restoring all that. So really, I don't think it could happen in Alaska in the same way because the topology is different and our resources are different. We're sort of accustomed to dramatic things happening every now and then and recovering from them quickly. But it was a really sobering thing to witness, and grateful to be here where the weather's kind of calm and nothing much exciting ever happens. So with that, I'll say that I do hope we can continue on. Do appreciate people making comments about the concerns they have with the schedule changes with the academies and different things. These are all things we need to work out, and I hope in the coming month we find good answers to those questions. If there are no further comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded. We are adjourned.